have to take care of this truck because this truck takes care of me. And it's a partnership, and that's why I take care of it.
When the History Channel first aired Ice Road Truckers in June 2007, it pulled in 3.4 million viewers on its very first night, making it the most watched original telecast the network had ever aired. For 11 seasons, millions of people tuned in every week to watch fearless men and women haul massive loads across frozen lakes and treacherous Arctic highways in temperatures that could drop to 60 below zero. These were real people doing one of the most dangerous jobs on Earth, and audiences fell in love with their personalities, their grit, and their stories. But here's what the cameras didn't always capture: the lives those drivers lived when the lights went off and the crew went home. Some of those stories are inspiring, and some of them are absolutely shocking. In 2025, as the show makes its long-awaited return with Season 12, fans are asking the same question: what really happened to the cast? Where are they now? And what about the ones who are no longer here to see the comeback? Because the truth is, since Ice Road Truckers wrapped its 11th season in 2017, some of its most beloved cast members have died, others have faced the justice system, and at least one saw his life and career shattered not by the ice, but by something far more preventable. So let's get into it. These are the real stories behind the cast of Ice Road Truckers, the deaths, the legal battles, and the legacies that fans deserve to know about. If there's a story that captures the cruel irony of the ice road trucking world, it belongs to Jack McCahan, a man who spent years hauling freight across one of the deadliest stretches of highway in North America, only to lose his life on that exact same road. Jack earned his nickname, Cactus Jack, the old-fashioned way, by being the kind of tough, weathered, sharp-witted driver who made everyone around him laugh while quietly doing some of the hardest work imaginable. He drove on the Dalton Highway, also known as the Hall Road, a remote and brutally harsh route that connects Fairbanks, Alaska, to Prudhoe Bay near the Arctic Ocean. This is not a road that forgives mistakes. Stretching almost 500 miles through frozen wilderness, it was built primarily for the pipeline and remains one of the most isolated trucking routes in the world. On the show, Jack brought experience, humor, and credibility. He even served as a trainer to fellow driver Alex Debogorski, which says everything you need to know about how his peers regarded him. He was the kind of man who had earned his place on that road many times over. Then, on October 15, 2014, the news broke that Cactus Jack had been involved in a serious crash on the Hall Road. Fellow cast member Lisa Kelly was among the first to break the news publicly, posting updates on Facebook and asking fans to keep Jack in their prayers. At first, there was cautious hope. He had made it through the first night in the ICU, and by late October, Lisa was updating fans that he was awake at times and appeared to be stabilizing. But the injuries were too severe. On November 26, 2014, Lisa Kelly confirmed on Facebook that Jack McCahan had passed away. She called him a true pro and asked fans to continue keeping his family in their thoughts. The following day, the blog maintained by fellow cast member Jack Jess's wife Judy published a full tribute, describing Cactus Jack as someone who was a hard-working trucker with a great sense of humor and simply a joy to be around. The tribute ended with the words, "He will be in our thoughts and so, still on the road, with us." Jack McCahan was 80 years old when he died. He had spent the better part of a lifetime on those roads. And the road he loved is ultimately what took him. Not every great man on Ice Road Truckers was loud, brash, or constantly grabbing screen time. Some of the most important figures on the show were the ones who simply showed up, did the work, and let their results speak. Gerald Roy Swenson, known to fans as Ollie Bear, was exactly that kind of man. Swenson was introduced to viewers in Season 2 of the show, appearing in 2008 during the grueling runs along the 194-kilometer Chuktukchuk winter road between Inuvik and Chuktukchuk in Canada's Northwest Territories. He came into the show as a 59-year-old veteran with 6 years of ice road experience already under his belt, plus decades of prior work in the logging industry and as a wilderness guide. He was not a man who needed to prove anything to anyone. By the end of that season, Swenson had completed 63 loads, hauling over 4 million pounds of cargo, the highest total of any of the main drivers that year. He didn't do it by being flashy. He did it by being consistent, disciplined, and deeply experienced. It was the kind of performance that makes quiet men unforgettable. Born in 1948 in Birch Hills, Saskatchewan, and raised in Lummi, British Columbia, Swenson spent most of his adult life doing physically demanding work in some of Canada's most remote and unforgiving regions. Off-screen, people who knew him described a man who met his friends for coffee every day, who was fiercely loyal to his family, and who carried himself with the unpretentious dignity of someone who had earned every callus on his hands. He was a grandfather, a brother, and by all accounts a man who was genuinely loved by those around him. Gerald Ollie Bear Swenson passed away on December 11, 2022, at the age of 74, following complications related to cancer. He left behind children, grandchildren, and siblings. His season on Ice Road Truckers remains a testament to what calm competence looks like in one of the world's most dangerous professions, and his record still stands. If you watched Ice Road Truckers between Season 6 and Season 10, you know exactly who Darrell Ward was. Born on August 13, 1964, in Montana into a family of harvest rig operators, Darrell grew up breathing diesel fumes and learning to read roads the way other kids learn to read books. By the time he joined the show in 2012, he had over 3 decades of trucking experience, including time spent on logging routes and long-haul runs before making his way to the Dalton Highway in Alaska. From the moment he arrived on screen, Darrell was magnetic. He had a backwards cap, an easy grin, and the kind of natural authority that doesn't come from telling people you know what you're doing. It comes from actually knowing what you're doing. He mentored rookies without being condescending, tackled dangerous conditions without panicking, and delivered his loads with a reliability that made him one of the most respected figures in the show's history. He and Lisa Kelly co-owned a trucking business together, and the professional partnership reflected the mutual respect they had for each other's craft. Off-camera, Darrell was the same man. He helped fight forest fires, organize community drives, and lived by his personal motto, any road, any load. He was, by every account, someone who made the world around him slightly better just by being in it. He was also, at the time of his death, on the verge of launching a documentary project focused on exploring the stories behind plane wreckages in remote Montana terrain, a passion project that combined his love of adventure with his connection to wild, open country. On August 28, 2016, Darrell Ward and his co-pilot, Mark Melitz, departed Missoula, Montana, aboard a Cessna 182D Skylane headed for Rock Creek Airport. Eyewitnesses on the ground saw the small aircraft veer sharply approximately 40 feet above the runway, before it struck a line of trees and caught fire. Both men died at the scene. A subsequent investigation by the National Transportation Safety Board was unable to determine the precise cause of the crash. The loss shook the entire trucking community. Season 10 of Ice Road Truckers, which had already begun airing at the time of his death, was dedicated to his memory starting from episode 5. Darrell Ward was 52 years old. The documentary about plane wrecks he had dreamed of making would never be filmed. The co-owned trucking business he and Lisa Kelly had built together was left for her to carry forward alone. And a personality that had lit up a television screen for 5 seasons simply went quiet. Not all the stories from the Ice Road Truckers cast involve tragedy on the road. Some involve the choices people make when the cameras aren't rolling and the spotlight has moved on. Art Burke joined the show in Season 7 in 2013, and over 38 episodes spanning 5 seasons he became one of its most popular personalities. A scrappy Canadian trucker with an unfiltered mouth and a skill set that genuinely matched his confidence, Burke had a way of making even the most terrifying moments on the ice feel almost entertaining. Fans loved him. His fellow drivers respected him. And when the show ended in 2017, there was no reason to think his story was headed anywhere but forward. Then came November 2018. Burke was living in an apartment in Yellowknife, Northwest Territories, when he decided to attempt making a cannabis concentrate known as shatter, a potent extract produced using liquid butane as a solvent. The problem with butane, as anyone with basic chemistry knowledge will tell you, is that it is extraordinarily flammable. A single spark at the wrong moment is all it takes. That spark came. The resulting explosion was so powerful that it was felt by people blocks away. Burke's apartment was destroyed, and the building, which largely housed elderly residents, sustained damages ultimately estimated at over $60,000. Burke himself suffered second-degree burns covering approximately 40% of his body and spent 12 days recovering in Stanton Territorial Hospital in Yellowknife. When the legal process concluded, Burke pleaded guilty in 2020 to the charge of arson by negligence. In court, he said of the incident, "In one heartbeat, everything I worked for vanished." The judge overseeing the case, Donovan Mallory of the Territorial Court, accepted the joint sentencing submission, 18 months of house arrest along with restitution payments totaling over $20,000 split between the housing corporation and the insurance companies involved, though Mallory made his dissatisfaction with the leniency of the sentence clearly known. Burke, who by then had relocated to Prince Edward Island, was permitted to serve portions of his house arrest from the cab of his truck so he could continue earning a living. And in a detail that perfectly summed up his personality, he arrived late to one of his own sentencing hearings, conducted via video call, further testing the judge's patience. As of 2025, Art Burke has completed his sentence. He continues to work in the trucking industry. But for many fans who remember the easy swagger he carried across 5 seasons of Ice Road Truckers, the image of that courthouse video call and those 12 days in the hospital tell a different story. One about what happens when a man who spent years defying danger on frozen lakes finally encounters a danger he chose to create himself. Of all the stories in the Ice Road Truckers universe, Hugh Rowland's may be the most complicated, not because of anything he did wrong, but because of what was done to him. Hugh Rowland, nicknamed the Polar Bear for his imposing build and ice-cold nerve under pressure, was the second most featured driver in the show's entire run, appearing prominently from the very first season through season 8. He had a gravelly voice, a no-nonsense disposition, and an encyclopedic knowledge of what it took to keep a loaded truck moving safely across cracking ice. Producers built episodes around him. He wrote a book, On Thin Ice, Breakdowns, Whiteouts, and Survival on the World's Deadliest Roads, that gave fans even more of the raw, unvarnished perspective they loved. He was, for 8 seasons, one of the faces of the franchise. Then, in 2014, everything changed. While off-duty and riding as a passenger in a pickup truck driven by Ice Road Truckers producer Will Morrison, the vehicle veered off a narrow Canadian road and crashed into trees. Rowland suffered severe injuries to the lower half of his body, injuries that, according to the lawsuit he subsequently filed, permanently altered his ability to drive trucks and returned him to a fraction of his former physical capability. The lawsuit against Morrison and the show's production was filed in early 2014. The allegations were stark: reckless driving, severe and permanent physical injuries, the end of a trucking career built over decades. The claims went further still. Court filings made public through TMZ revealed that Rowland's injuries also devastated his marriage, as he alleged that the physical damage left him unable to be intimate with his wife. The combination of career destruction and personal loss made the suit one of the more heartbreaking chapters in the show's off-screen history. Rowland never appeared on Ice Road Truckers again. The network quietly wrote him out, and the lawsuit, which was never fully publicized, appears to have reached some form of resolution, though the terms remain private. His trucking company, VP Express, eventually went quiet on social media and online directories. Today, Hugh Rowland reportedly runs a construction company and has stepped away from the ice road world entirely. He still appears occasionally at truck shows, signing autographs for fans who remember the Polar Bear in his prime. He walks with a cane. And the career that made him one of the most recognizable faces in trucking television ended not on the ice, but on a quiet road when a producer lost control of a wheel.